Chapter 1. Grace Watts was struggling to stay afloat in deep, choppy water. Whenever she thought she'd located the surface and tried to right herself in order to float, another wave would batter her back down. Although the water chilled her, she fought with as much determination as she could muster. She raised her head above the waves and looked around and listened as best she could, waving her arms to make herself as visible as possible. No luck. Another wave would always hammer down upon her, silencing her whenever she tried to utter a frantic call for help. Still, she had no intention of giving in and being pulled under by the fierce current. The cold water made her joints ache. Her stamina finally ran out. She looked up to see a quick glimpse of the sky and went down for the last time. For a split second, her view was distorted as the salt water forced her burning eyes closed. The sea filled her lungs and her last breath bubbled up toward the surface. Grace opened her eyes and found herself standing in a dark space. Her clothes were soaking wet and clammy, and she shivered. She looked ahead. About 150 yards away was a patch of light. She sneezed and ran her wet sleeve across her nose. Sniffling, trembling with chills, teeth chattering, she put one uneasy foot in front of the other. After about 10 paces, her strength began to return as the light became more inviting. She picked up her pace, hoping to get there quicker and warm herself as much as she could along the way. Finally, she crossed the threshold. The light was very warm and very bright. She squeezed her eyes closed, but that did not even help. Unable to bear it, she hooked her arm across her forehead to cover her eyes. For some strange reason, her arm was dry, and everything around her shook. Grace opened her eyes and peeked out from behind her arm, squinting into a sunbeam that was coming through her bedroom window and bearing down onto her pillow. She took a deep breath, sat up in bed, and looked to her left. Her husband David lay next to her masturbating, and this was making the mattress bounce. She grimaced, shuddered, and rose from the bed, glancing at the clock on the nightstand to her left as she did so. It was 7:15, and the alarm still had yet to sound.
No, I got it.
She took a quick shower, donned her bathrobe, and headed for the kitchen. As she set the egg carton on the counter, she heard the sound of the alarm and footsteps as David made his way to the bathroom. As the shower turned on, she smiled, knowing that she would have his breakfast ready as soon as he was out, and glad he would not hurry her along, complaining about a schedule to keep. Just as Grace was putting the food on the table, David walked into the dining room. "Looks fantastic, darling," he said. "Smells fantastic, too." "Sunny side up, just how you like it," said Grace, smiling even though sometimes she thought David took it for granted that she cooked the breakfast. She walked back into the kitchen and returned with 2 glasses of orange juice. "I'm truly blessed to have such a thoughtful wife, huh?" said David, his blue eyes twinkling as he smiled. Grace leaned down to kiss him and sat down to eat. "What are your plans tonight?" asked David as he chewed on some of the Canadian bacon. "Oh, it's movie night tonight," said Grace, sipping her orange juice. Every Friday night she met up with Roberta Clear, her friend with whom she worked at the bookstore, and Roberta's roommate, Jackie Rubenstein, to watch movies at their apartment. "Ah, so you're going to the stupid witch's place," said David, smirking. Grace gave David a stern look. "Please don't call her that, David," she said with a pained sigh. "Well, I don't see why you're hanging around with her and that idiotic hippie at your age," said David. "Aren't you a little old for them anyway? They're college kids. I mean, come on, Grace, you're going to be Grace interrupted her husband. "David, they are my friends," she said with a short tone of voice. David sneered. "Obviously you're a good judge of character." "I think so. Roberta is sweet, intelligent, kind, loyal." David rolled his eyes. "Yeah, but the nonsense she believes in?" Grace twitched, trying to keep her annoyance from growing. She knew that Roberta's interest in the occult did not score her points with David. He never did believe in magic of any sort, and never thought much of people who did. Of course, it was unfair to him to hold Roberta in such low regard. Roberta was indeed a deep and genuine person, and highly perceptive for somebody who was all of 22 years old. "David, I know you disagree with her, but her beliefs are her prerogative," said Grace, as she took a bite of buttered English muffin. "Besides, what did she ever do to you?" "And Jackie," said David, screwing up his face into a derisive grimace. "What a moron!" Grace blinked twice and raised her eyebrows. She'd always admired Jackie's aspirations toward a career in music, being that Jackie was quite accomplished at piano and bass guitar. She was annoyed that David, a successful real estate agent, considered such an ambition pointless and believed that a person's value was based on nothing but how much money he or she earned. Jackie was also a vegetarian who also involved herself with social and environmental causes, something that David dismissed as asinine hippie shit. By the same token, Jackie and Roberta both despised David. They thought he was shallow and arrogant. Grace leaned over and looked David in the eye. It is too early in the morning for this bullshit. Did you wake up on the wrong side of the bed, David? She said with a condescending smile. Well, if you don't mind, I'd like to drop the subject. It's too early in the morning for me to get into a discussion about this. Yeah, whatever, said David. He looked her in the eye. You don't get high with them, do you? David gave her a challenging stare and a tiny, sinister grin. He knew that Grace's friends both liked to smoke marijuana. On occasion, he'd seen them with bloodshot, glassy, and half-closed eyes. To his mind, this confirmed that they were a pair of directionless losers, and he swore he would cast Grace out of his life if he found out she, too, was indulging. Not at all, said Grace, and I would appreciate it if you gave me a bit more credit than that. Indeed, Grace was telling the truth. During college, she partied very regularly and still made straight A's. Marriage to David, however, forced her into abstinence, so although lying next to him late at night had an effect on her that was just as soothing as a tall, cold glass of beer or a bong hit. For a while. And one more thing, said David, angry fire beginning to smolder in her bright blue eyes. I already asked you nicely, David, that I'd like to drop the subject. It is too early in the morning to get into a discussion about this. Okay? David sighed. Well, hope you have a good time, he said. Whenever they argued, Grace always had the last word. As much as he loved her and was devoted to her, that always annoyed him. He was also troubled by a sneaking suspicion that she would be too tired to have any sex when she returned. But as far as Grace was concerned, after 6 years of marriage, she was growing less and less interested in David physically. Even though she could look past his small penis, over the years it dawned on her that he wasn't the imaginative type. He almost always preferred the missionary position, and always reached orgasm in a few very short minutes. After Grace and David finished eating, she went upstairs and dressed, then followed David out the door to his forest green Mercedes-Benz. David drove her to the train station and they kissed each other goodbye. She stepped out to make the train to New Haven, and he drove off to meet a client. Grace claimed her seat on the train across from a young woman with long, straight brown hair. She wore metallic blue eyeshadow, tight blue jeans with a tear on the knee, a Blondie t-shirt, and a sterling silver skull ring. Grace sighed and stared ahead, pondering the dream she had last night as she looked forward to another shift at Atticus Bookstore, where she'd been working on and off since college. When the train stopped in Bridgeport, a young woman in a business outfit boarded the train and sat down next to the young woman sitting across from Grace. "Marissa, how are you?" said the young woman in the business suit, smiling and giving her a hug. "I'm great, thanks, Debbie," said the young woman in the t-shirt and jeans. "How was New York?" "It was fantastic," gushed Marissa. "I rented CBGB's, the New Eurekan Bowery Poetry Club in this new place downtown. Oh, it was a blast. People were really getting into it." "That's great." With a sad smile, Grace remembered what it was like before she married David. She wrote poetry and performed at open mics in New York City. She majored in English and history at Southern Connecticut State University and had considered teaching. But when David went for his real estate license, she opted to work full-time to support him, which left little time for poetry or graduate school. Not surprisingly, her interest in both waned. Of course, she loved David dearly, and as he became more and more successful, the charmed life he provided for her mitigated her losses, and her position at the bookstore, despite being little more than a dead-end job, had provided her with some pocket money and a comfort zone. For a while. It was May 6, 2005. On November 30th, Grace would be 30 years old. She released a silent moan. Would I be lying if I said my life had turned out like I had wanted? Thanks very much. Thank y'all for sticking around. You guys are great. Thanks a million. And I got flyers if you want more information about the book and stuff like that. My email is right at the bottom, so come see me if you want to check out the flyer. Thank you. And Casey is, right? Thanks, Casey. You should check out, you're playing when in the Mission?
Everywhere. Brainwash Cafe, 17th.
And where's...
Here tomorrow. Just come here tomorrow. That's more important.
Yeah, he's playing here tomorrow. So y'all should check him out. He's really good. Reminds me of Link Wright. Thanks again, folks.